All right, in my last video, we talked about the difference between Passive House and Net Zero Ready. There's going to be a couple of questions that come out of that, so this is just a bit more of a description for those that want a little more information. So in BC, referencing the BC Energy Step Code, Step 5 is Net Zero Ready. Now, what the difference between the Step Code and Passive House is Passive House sets the bar. They set it right here. It's either you meet it or you don't. In a Net Zero Ready context, what they've done is allowed us a little bit more elasticity based on climate zones. And why that's important is because the heating demand, how often your furnace has to run in Vancouver is very different than it is in Dawson Creek, because it's a lot harsher of a climate. And what the province did to try to be fair, a little more equitable, is to allow some more space for climate zones that just need to run the heater longer than the really temperate climate down in Vancouver, which is similar to Seattle. But Passive House says we don't care. This is the standard. You're going to be Passive House. You're going to meet these demands, these loads, these air tightness hours, these thermal comfort criteria, and this maximum demand energy. That's it. And what's really cool about that is that when you get a Passive House, you get a Passive House, you get a Passive House. What's really hard about that is that for people in Canada, especially Canada and Northern Canada specifically, it just becomes a lot more expensive to meet these criteria. You have to get really, really, really expensive insulation cavities in your wall. You have to get really expensive windows as compared to the very high quality windows you need for a house in Vancouver, Seattle, for example. You need exponentially more efficient windows in a cold or an Arctic climate. So this is where the Passive House standard starts to lose traction, because it's really easy in a Caribbean climate to become a Passive House. It's really hard in a cold or Arctic climate to become Passive House, and the cost to close that gap is just prohibitive, put it that way. So not to say don't. And I also want to communicate that a Passive House can become a Net Zero house. If you're able to meet these super efficient standards and you put a few solar panels on the roof, you're there. So Passive House can be Net Zero, but Passive House is not trying to be Net Zero. They're trying to be super energy efficient, which makes them easy to convert to Net Zero with renewables. Whereas the Net Zero moniker says that, you know, your house makes as much energy as it uses. So theoretically, the more energy efficient your home is, the easier it'll be to make it Net Zero, regardless of how you get there. So this is all very good, and these play together. Now, the Step Code is the provincial standard that's trying to walk the building industry towards a more airtight building package, towards a more energy efficient. It means you can't have inefficient mechanical assemblies in your house if you're going to meet these criteria. It also means that you're going to have to pay attention to the caliber of windows that you put into your house, because you're going to need to offset some of these. Poor windows cause overheating in the summer, and they cause the furnace to work really hard in the winter. So having these standards are representative of expectations on the building envelope components. So again, broken up by climate zones, they'll be different. The Step 3, 4, 5 reflect progressions towards Net Zero. By the time you're Step 5, you're meeting these criteria, you're Net Zero Ready, because again, similar enough to Passive House, because you can even see the numbers of kilowatt hours per meter squared per year are the same based on the climate region here. So it's again easy to offset with the renewables you put on. So note that there are differences in how they calculate total floor area, what they include, and there's nuances between the two programs, but they are very much complementary. If you go Passive House, you're close to Net Zero, throw some renewables on, you're rock and roll. If you decide to go Step Code, Net Zero Ready, and not go to Passive House, you still have a super high performance home here, and you're definitely moving in the right direction. Okay, there's my answer. Hope it helps.